What's going on, guys? Welcome back to your 30-second JavaScript tutorial. And in this tutorial, I'm going to be talking about the last array methods. Now, there are a couple more that I didn't cover, but these are the most basic ones, most well-known, and also the ones that you're going to be working with the most often. So, if you want to learn all of them, then, I don't know, go on like the website for JavaScript arrays or something. But for now, I think this is all I need to cover. So, in this tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you about the reverse, push, and sort methods. So before we get into that, we actually need an array. And I'm going to make an array of body parts. So I'm just going to name it BP because, way too lazy to type out body parts. So let's go ahead and put like head, shoulders, knees, and can you guess? Toes. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes, knees, and toes. Anyways, so the first thing I'm going to be teaching about is called the reverse method. And what this does is you take your array and you reverse it. It doesn't take any parameters because you're just reversing it. So now our BP array is toes, knees, shoulders, and head, as opposed to head, shoulders, knees, and toes. So I'm not going to print it out because, trust me, it reversed it. Just believe me. So aside from that, the next method I want to show you guys is something called the push method. Now, the push method is kind of the opposite of pop. You know how pop took the last element and removed it from the end of your array? What the push method does is it adds element onto the end of your array. So you can either add one element or multiple elements. So for example, if you wanted to add one element on the end of your array, you would push one element on like tongue. And this would add tongue to the end of your array. If you wanted to add another one, you can either call this method again, or you can just separate it with a parameter and add another body part to the end of your array. So what this would do is add these elements onto the end of your array. Simple enough. So the last method I want to talk to you guys about that I'm going to introduce is called the sort method. And all this does is it takes all your elements in your array and it sorts them in alphabetical order. So no matter if you reverse them, push them, or what you did before, this is now going to take all of these elements and sort them out in alphabetical order and replace them in your array. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to print this out on the screen, and by the time I'm doing this and by the time I'm done writing this code, I want you guys to see if you can type all of these in alphabetical order. So let me see if I can code this or you can type it faster. So ready, set, go. String 1 equals BP join. Oh, crap. I'm getting too nervous. BP join. Document write. Wow. If you guys don't win, then that is embarrassing. Document write string 1. Now let me go ahead, save, refresh, and bam. So I'm guessing that since I was incredibly slow, I think I took like 20 seconds, that is what you guys should have guessed. So if you can sort this manually faster than I can, then that's embarrassing. If I didn't have like 8,000 typos, then, maybe I'd stand a chance. But anyways, now that I just raised you guys, let me explain what I just did. What I did is I joined them, and remember what this method does. It takes your array and it converts it to a string separated by a comma, and it stored that in the variable string1. And then all I did is I wrote string1 on the screen. So that's how I got this. So basically, we reversed it, we pushed two elements on, and then it sorted it. So basically, reversing it did nothing. But anyways, we did it anyways. So we basically added two elements into this array, and we sorted it alphabetically. And as you can see, now this array is in alphabetical order: H, K, L, S, T, T. So that's alphabetical order. There you go. So that's all I have for you guys for different array methods. Like I said, there are more array methods, but I'm not going to be talking about all of them with you guys. So that's all I have for you guys for this tutorial. And the next tutorial, we're probably going to be talking more about arrays, but I promise we're done with array methods for now. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. What is going on, guys? It is Bucky, and welcome to your 33rd JavaScript tutorial. And in this tutorial, we're going to be going over how to add array elements using a loop. Now, we're going to be learning this for a couple of reasons. First of all, whenever you're working in web design in JavaScript, it's a cool little technique that is definitely going to come in handy. And aside from that, it kind of takes the things that we learned already and combines them into a cool little mini program. So before I get into that, I'm going to be using something called the prompt, and I can't remember if I taught you guys prompt in this JavaScript series or the last JavaScript series, but if I already taught this to you guys and you already know what it means, I apologize, but I just want to, go over it anyway. So basically what a prompt is it's a lot similar to an alert box. The only difference is the user can enter text in a little text box, and with the text that they entered, say they entered their name Bucky or something, you can take that name and set it equal to a variable. So it pretty much is an easy way to allow the user to create their own variables. So let me show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. Go ahead and make a variable. I'm going to name mine pi or whatever and set it equal to prompt. This is a built-in JavaScript function, so no need to create it yourself later on. And prompt takes two parameters. The first parameter is something like enter your name. The first parameter is gonna basically give them a little dialogue. Like if you had a prompt that you want them to enter in your name, you would be like enter your name. If you want a prompt, say pick a number, you would write pick a number. You'll see later on where this appears on the text box. And the second parameter is what appears in the text box by default. Now we don't want anything to appear in text box by default, so we're just going to leave this blank, but you need to put those empty double quotation marks. So now whatever they enter in this text box or the prompt box that pops up, it's going to be stored in the variable pi. So now what we can do is we can print out that variable, using how we already know document write. So document dot write, and we'll write like hello and then just write the name pi. So let's go ahead and save this and see what the heck I'm talking about. So here is my prompt box right here. Enter your name, Bucky Roberts. Okay, and now it says hello Bucky Roberts. Simple enough. So like I said, it's basically a prompt box that gives the user a dialogue such as enter your name, and by default if you leave the second parameter empty, just double quotation marks, nothing's going to appear in here. But you can put something in there by default like enter text here. That's like one of the common techniques. But anyways, I just wanted to show you guys what a prompt box was so you guys aren't lost whenever I teach you guys this new technique. So anyways, the technique I'm going to teach you guys is how to add elements to an array using a for loop. So let's go ahead and make an array called crap and set it equal to new array, and let's go ahead and give a size of like 3 elements already. So right now our array is empty, we don't have any elements in it. So let's go ahead and make a loop that runs 3 times. So in order to do that, go ahead and your parameters are this: I equals 0, it's going to start at 0 and then go I is less than 3. So then whenever we increment it by 1 using I++, this is going to run 3 times. Again, you might think 0, 1, 2, 3. That's 4 times. But notice that this is I is less than 3. So when it gets to 3, it doesn't run. It's only going to run on this: 0, 1, and 2. So if you count those up, it's 3 times. So now we know that I is going to be equal to 0 the first time, 1 the second time, and 2 the third time. So now we can use that to our advantage because remember, whenever we're creating an array indexes start at 0, so then again, what am I saying? Then whenever we create our array, we can just go ahead and stick I in here, and now it's going to run 3 times. First, it's going to say crap 0. The second time it runs, it's going to be crap 1, and the third time it's going to be crap 2. Those are the 3 elements that we need to to fill our array. So let's go ahead and we can just add elements in here like hey now, or baked beans or whatever we want, but we want the user to enter these elements. So in order to do that, here is where we use that technique we just learned called the prompt box, just like that. So let's go ahead and give them something like add something to the array. Why hit caps lock? I don't know, but F it, I'm keeping it. And then we don't want to put anything in there by default because that would just be dumb. So now what's going to happen is this prompt box is going to pop up 3 times. The first time, it's going to say add something to the array. You're going to type something in, and it's going to add it to the array index 0. The next time you type something, it's going to add it to array index 1. And the last time, it's going to add something to array index 2. So now we have a populated array, and then we can just do something with it, like print it out on the screen, like document dot write, and just go ahead and write something like crap 0 plus crap 1 plus crap 2. So let's go ahead and save this, and I got a feeling something's going to happen here. Oh, check it out. It worked perfectly. I thought that this was going to appear over here off the screen, but game time. So it says add something to the array. Now we're going to add something like baked. Actually, let's add something like beans. And then we press OK, and that beans right now is stored in array 0. So now it runs through the loop again, add something to the array, and add something like candy. So we press OK, and now candy is stored in array 1. And now this is the last time it's going to run. It just says add something to the array, and we add something like dogs. And press OK, and when we press OK, that's going to be stored in crap 2. So now we have beans in 0, candy in 1, dogs in 2. So then whenever we printed out 0, 1, and 2, it printed out our filled array. So that's pretty cool, and I know I could have probably added some spaces there or maybe some line breaks, but again, this is just a quick example showing you how to have the user populate an array using a for loop. So if you understood that, then you got the main idea of 1, why an array is useful, and 2, why loops are useful. And there are a lot of different techniques that you can use using an array and loops, and not only entering information, but they're also really useful when printing out information. So again, the most common technique that I want to stress is this: use the array index as the counter. So that is a very popular technique. So once you get the hang of that, you take your array skills to a whole new level. So for now, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you understand what a prompt is and also how to loop through arrays using a for loop. So lastly, thank you guys for watching one more time. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to your 34th JavaScript tutorial, and this tutorial is probably going to be pretty quick because I only have one small thing to talk about, but it's a really cool technique and the easiest technique for printing out an array, so you definitely want to pay attention. So let's go ahead and first create an array. I'm just going to name it stuff, why the heck not, and new array. Let's just go ahead and create it right in here, and go ahead and type like 5 random words like apples, pears, let's see, bacon, tuna, and ham. Simple enough, and actually that looks like my grocery list. So anyways, we have an array called stuff, and it consists of 5 elements. The first thing that people like to do before they just go ahead and print it out is you probably want to sort this in some kind of order, and might as well just use the sort method, and it'll sort it in alphabetical order. So go ahead and take stuff and use the sort method, and now what this does is it sorts the array stuff. So now whenever we print it out, it's going to be in a nice, neat alphabetical order. So we're saying, alright, let's just go ahead and print out this array using, the technique we learned before. We go ahead and make a for loop, and then we go ahead and set I equal to 0, and then we go ahead and set I is less than, and then we go ahead and count the elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can go ahead and set I is less than 5, and this is going to loop through it 5 times. Simple enough. But a better technique is this. Say later on you might add an element to your array or take an element out of your array, so the array size might change from 5 to 4, or make go from like 5 to 7 or something. Well, then we would have to change our for loop, and things might get confusing. So a better technique is this. Whenever you start at 0, your second parameter can just be I is less than the length of that array. So now, later on, if you were to change the size of this array, you wouldn't have to change this variable. This variable would automatically know to count however many items are in your array. So I'll show you guys that later on, but now again go ahead and increment it by 1 and we'll be good to go. So now all we have to do is tab and document dot write anything you want out on the screen. So using that technique we learned in the last tutorial, if we just go ahead and put our array and use I as the index, it's going to work perfectly since it's going to start at 0 and go all the way to 4. And since there are 5 elements in our array, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's going to give us our 5 indexes as I, and it's going to work perfectly. So we can print it out like this, but it might appear a little jumbled. So I want to go ahead and add a line break using that right there. So now each item in our array will appear on a new line whenever we print it out on our web page. So let's go ahead and save this, launch in Chrome, and check it out. Our array, which was jumbled before, is now sorted in alphabetical order, and we also printed out nice and neat on each line. So go ahead and let me show you guys the benefit of this. So now let's go ahead and delete bacon or something. And now we only have 4 elements in our array. So before, where we would have to change this variable, it's going to recount it and it's automatically going to know that your length of the array has changed. So no need to change a variable here. Well, whenever we save it and refresh it, our program is going to continue to work fine. So the technique I want to teach you guys in this tutorial was basically, instead of a number here, which would be the size of your array, you can just use this length property, and what this does is it automatically counts however many elements are in your array, so you don't have to worry about what number appears there. It's going to do all the dirty work for you. And this is really useful when you have an array like of 800 elements or something, so you don't have to count them every time. And aside from that, I just want to show you guys how you can use that index in the for loop to plug that in as the array index and loop through an array really easily and simply. So this is definitely combining this technique I taught you in this tutorial and the last technique. We learned basically how to use for loops and arrays to just build programs that work so easily together. So don't forget these techniques because they are definitely going to come in handy later on. So for now, that's all I have for you guys. But yeah, I don't know what I'm going to be teaching in the next tutorial, but it's going to be pretty cool. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to sub, and I will see you next tutorial. What's up guys, welcome to your 35th JavaScript tutorial, and in this tutorial I'm going to teach you guys how to use something called an associative array. Now it's kind of different than the arrays we've been learning before for one main reason. Instead of using array index numbers to access the elements in our array, we can use strings of characters instead. So basically words instead of numbers. So let's go ahead and let me show you guys an example, because if I try to explain it, it'll just confuse you. If I show you guys an example, it'll make it really easy to see what's going on. So I'm going to make an array called Bucky, and I'm going to set this equal to new array. Let's just go ahead and leave it blank for now. Now, like I said, before we learned that you can make an array using index numbers like this. But what an associative array does is it allows you to use strings of characters such as the word color, and this basically what associative array is. It associates a word with another variable instead of a number. So now we can set Bucky color equal to Bucky's favorite color, which is blue. It's actually a tie for blue and white, but you know, I'll use blue. It's shorter to type. So aside from that, we can add other elements to the Bucky array. So instead of, 0 or 1 or 2, we can make Bucky array index food, and this might be equal to my favorite food, which is Hot Pockets or mac and cheese. It's a tie, but might as well throw Hot Pockets in there. So now, as you can see, basically all an associative array is instead of numbers like 0, 1, 2, you can replace it with characters such as color, food, name, hair color, and how you access this is the exact same. So now we can go ahead and make document write and do something stupid like Bucky's favorite food is, and then just go ahead and add a plus. And now, again, like I said, to access any element in the array, you write the name of your array, and then you write the index, which is either food or color right here. So this is going to print out Bucky's favorite food is Hot Pockets. Hopefully, as long as I didn't mess anything up. So I'll launch it in Chrome and refresh it. And actually, I need a semicolon instead of a colon there. And now I get Bucky's favorite food is Hot Pockets. So let's take a look at one more quick example and just throw color right in there. So now we have an array Bucky that has two elements in it. Bucky color, which is equal to blue, and Bucky food, which is equal to Hot Pockets. So now it's going to say Bucky's favorite food is blue, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, but hey, at least it works. So check it out. Bucky's favorite food is blue. Maybe I'm talking about those kablooies because whenever I was in 5th grade, I ate these things called kablooies. They're pretty much a jawbreaker, but they like dyed your mouth blue. Which, why would you want your mouth dyed blue? I don't know, about I was in 5th grade and I absolutely loved it. So, so anyways, that is what an associative array is. It's really simple. It's just a little bit different than the arrays that we've been learning before. So anyways, now you know the concepts of an associative array. And by the way, let me mention this. Whenever you're working with arrays and building programs later on, like calculators and looking at data and stuff, you don't really use associative arrays as much as you use the other type of array, but they're always nice to know if you ever come across it. So anyways, that's all I have to say. In the next tutorials, we're going to be stepping away from arrays and going into another topic. So for now, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you guys later. Welcome back, guys, to your 35th JavaScript tutorial. And in this tutorial, actually, I think it's the 36th tutorial. Anyways, in this tutorial, I'm going to be going over the math object. Now, just like the array object we saw in the last few tutorials, the array object had built-in properties such as length, and it also had built-in methods such as sort and push, pop. So aside from the array objects, that's one of the built-in objects in JavaScript, you also have something called the math object. So this is really useful whenever you're making like a calculator or a program that does calculations on any kinds of numbers. The math object has built-in properties, and these properties are most often mathematical values such as pi, Euler's constant, and let's go ahead and actually, enough of me talking, let's go ahead and take a look at some of those properties right now, like document, write, and let's go ahead and write one of the properties such as math.pi. Now, pi is going to be like 3.14159.26535. So in order to save us the trouble of having to write out that number every time, what we can do is we can just go ahead and save it and check it out. JavaScript already stores the value of pi, so anytime you want to use pi whenever calculating the area of a circle or something, you don't have to go Google the value of pi and set it equal to a variable. JavaScript already stores it as a property of that math object to give you very easy access to it. So that's one of the beauties of the properties of your math object. Another one is Euler's constant, and Euler's of course begins with the E because they decided on the spelling of that, and that is this again. So the properties of the math objects in JavaScript are basically just values that have mathematical meaning. So you're saying, alright, that's pretty cool. I don't have to go Google the number every time, but aside from that, the math object is useful for some of its methods as well, such as in order to find the square root of a number, yeah, we could go ahead and make a function for it, but a lot of these easy, simple mathematical functions are already built into JavaScript. So, such as finding the square root of a number, or whenever we're doing like 5 to the third power, there's a there's a method for that already. And if we wanted to make a function for rounding up or rounding down, we could use a built-in math method for that as well. So let's go ahead and make a program that allows the user to enter a number, and it calculates the square root of that number. So again, like I said, we can go ahead and create our own function for finding the square root, but why do that when we can use one of JavaScript's built-in math object methods? So let's go ahead and make a variable and set it equal to n, and this will be equal to the number that the user enters. And in order to do that, we need to give them a prompt box, aka a space to enter a number. And we'll give them a real simple prompt like enter a number, and by default we'll set it equal to nothing at all. So now we need another variable to store the answer of that. So the math object is going to calculate it, and we're going to store the answer in a variable called answer. So now, in order to use this math object that square roots a number, you do this. Write the math object, use a dot separator, and the name of the method is this, sqrt. Now the parameter is what number do you want to square root? Well, they already entered a number and it's going to be stored in the variable n, so just go ahead and stick that number in there. Say they entered 81. What this is going to do is it's going to take the square root of 81, which is 9, and it's going to store that 9 in the variable answer. So now all we have to do is print out their answer. So we can, document write it, but let's go ahead and make an alert box because we already have a prompt box that pops up. An alert box, what do you know, make the feel of the program a little more natural. So now let's just go ahead and write something like the square root of, and now we would just go ahead and write n since that was the original number. Then just go ahead and write like is answer. So now it's going to, well, let me go ahead and run it and then I'll talk you guys through it one more time. So it's going to say enter a number and just go ahead and type in like 16, press OK, and it's going to say the square root of 16 is 4. Simple enough. Let's give it a harder one to, make sure it's running correctly. Enter number 144. Okay, the square root of 144 is 12. Working perfect. So basically, the program works like this. You give it a prompt box, and the user enters a number such as 144. Now 144 is stored in the variable n. So it takes that value of 144, finds the square root of it using this built-in square root method, and it stores the answer, which is 12, in the variable answer. And then last but not least, it just says the square root of 144 is 12. There you go. So as you can see, using this little, 8 characters of code and whatnot is a lot more simple than having to write our own square root function and then calling our function and then making sure that they, enter the right values and yada yada yada. A lot of these functions are already built into JavaScript. So why am I telling you this? I just want to save you guys the trouble of having to write your own functions all the time, because they were saying, you know what, this is really common function, I bet JavaScript already has this built in. Chances are it does. So that is why the math function, or excuse me, the math object is useful, not only when working with math constants, but also simple math methods. And if you want a list of the math methods, just go ahead and look online. They have a huge list of them. They're probably, I want to guess, like 30 or so. But anyways, enough of me talking. That is all I'm going over for the math object. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. What is going on, guys? It is Bucky, and welcome to your 37th JavaScript tutorial. And in this tutorial, I want to go over something called the date object. Now, the date object is a really useful built-in object whenever you're working with the date and the time. So what it does is whenever you create a date object, it goes ahead and it grabs the current date, which is in this case 3/31/2011, and it also grabs the current time, which is 3:21 p.m. So let's go ahead, and before I get into the date object even more, I want to show you guys a special function that we're going to be using, and that's called the set interval function. So what the set interval function does is someone's texting me. Hold on. Let me see who it is. Some girl's macking on me. Sorry, girl, you're going to have to wait. I'm doing a tutorial. So anyways, what the set interval function does is it runs a function however much time you want to increment it by. So for example, you can run a function every second or every 5 seconds. So this is really hard to explain, so I'm just going to show you guys an example. So function, we'll just name it like do something, and what this function is going to do is just print something out on the screen. So document write, and just go ahead and write like tuna on the screen or something, tune key, who the heck cares. So set interval takes 2 parameters. The first parameter it takes is what function do you want to run. Well, I'm just going to run that do something and make sure, there we go, it's the right one. Make sure I didn't have any typos. And the second parameter is the increment you want to run it in, and this is in milliseconds. So if you write 1000 milliseconds, that means 1 second. So now what's going to happen is this. You're going to have your function called do something, and all this does is print something out on the screen, and you're going to say run this function every 1 second. So now if you go ahead and launch this in Chrome, it's going to say tuna, 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 tuna every single second. So that's a pretty cool function. Again, that's called the set interval function, and the reason I want to explain it to you guys is because we're going to be using it in the program we're going to be building right now. So anyways, the program I'm going to be making is this. I'm going to be making a basic clock, and what this clock is going to do is each second it's going to give you what time it is. So it's going to say 323, 323 1 second, 323 2 seconds, 323 3 seconds. So it's not going to be formatted nicely, and it's not going to be real pretty because I only have like 7 more minutes to make it. But I'm just going to try to explain to you guys what the date object is and how the date object is useful whenever you create things like clocks. So the first thing that we're going to be needing is a function that we're going to be calling every second. So go ahead and make a function, and I'm going to name mine print time because all this is going to do is print the timeout on your computer. Oh, got a hairball. Print the timeout on your computer screen. So go ahead and make a variable called now, and in order to make a new date object, go ahead and press new date with empty parentheses. And what this does is it's going to go ahead and grab the current time of day and also the date and store it in a variable called now. So now that variable called now holds the current date and the current time. So it holds a lot of information, but we want to access certain pieces of information such as the hours, the minutes, and the current seconds. And what we're going to be doing with this information is just printing it out. So let's go ahead and make a couple variables. Variables hours is going to be equal to now, which is the date object, and the method to get the hours in that date object is get hours. So for example, right now, like I said, it's 3:24 p.m. So it's gonna get the number 15 because 15 is the number of hours in military time of 3 o'clock. The reason it doesn't grab 3 even though it's 3:24 p.m. is because if it just spit out the number 3, you wouldn't know if it was 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. So that's why it whoever made JavaScript decided to get it in military time. So this is gonna have 15 stored in the variable hours, which is equal to 3 o'clock. So now let's go ahead and make the variable minutes, which is equal to now.get minutes. And like I said, right now the current time is 3:25. So now this variable is going to be equal to 25. Pretty cool, huh? And last but not least, you can probably guess what I'm going to do now. Variable seconds equals now get seconds. So this is the number that's going to be changing on our screen every time. It's going to be like 15, 16, 17, 18. And it's going to print out a new second every time, since every second it's going to be grabbing all that information, and the seconds is going to be changing every time we print it out. So basically all these variables are grabbing the current hours, the current minutes, and the current seconds. Simple enough. So now all we have to do is print it out on the screen. So document dot write, and let me just go ahead and write it in a hours plus colon plus mins plus colon plus seconds, and after seconds I'm just going to add a line break because what we could do is make this appear on the same line, but I'm just going to make the new time appear on the new line every time since I don't have that much time to make a pretty looking alarm clock. So I think this is good. So what this is going to do is it's going to print out 15, 26, 30, 15, 26, 31, 15, 26, 32, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and check it out. We now have a function that prints out the current time, but now we have to use that set interval function that we learned before to call this function every 1 second. So again, like I said, it takes 2 parameters. The first parameter is print time, or in other words, what function do we want to call, and the second parameter is how often do we want to call it. 1000 milliseconds, aka we want to call this function every 1 second. So now let's go ahead and save it and launch in Chrome. and I got a typo somewhere, so hold on, I'll find it for you. Alright guys, I found my error. I accidentally typed get menus instead of get minutes. So now that I threw the T in there, it actually should work now. So let's go ahead and launch in Chrome. There we go. 15, 29, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54. So every second it calls that function. And again, like I said, I could have formatted this nicely so it maybe would have said 3 o'clock instead of military time, and maybe I could have put it on the same line of having it instead of having it appear on a different line every time. But hey, I only have like 10 minutes to make these tutorials, so that's what you get. So basically, what I want to show you guys in this tutorial is we can use the setInterval function, which is a built-in function in JavaScript, to call one of our functions in a certain time increment, in this case every second. So in this example, every second it called our function print time, and all print time does is it uses that date object to store the current time of day in the variable now. And what we did is there are a bunch of different informations in that object. 3 of them are get hours, get minutes, and get seconds. We use those pieces of information to make a very simple clock on our website. Again, the date object has a lot of different methods that are associated with it. If I went through all the methods, then it would take an awful lot of time, and I don't have that much time in these tutorials. It'll take like 20 tutorials to teach you guys of all the different methods, but if you want to learn those methods, go to the JavaScript website, whatever the heck it is, and you can check them out. But anyways, whenever you're working with dates, such as building a calendar, or times, such as building an alarm clock, this is the object that you need to use, and this is how you create it right here. So hopefully you guys learn the concepts of setInterval and also how to use the date object for something in a kind of useful program. So for now, that's all I have for you guys. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video. What is going on, guys? It's Bucky, and welcome to your 38th JavaScript tutorial. And in this tutorial, I'm going to begin talking about JavaScript and forms. Now, one of the reasons why JavaScript is so popular today in web design is because it has this built-in ability to work perfectly with forms, especially when I talk about verifying data. For example, if you had a form on your website and you wanted the user to enter email, well, you don't want just them to put in like tuna fish or a bunch of numbers. You want an actual email with an @ sign and a dot for like .com. So you want to be able to verify this data, and that's where JavaScript comes in handy. So again, sometimes people learn JavaScript only for form validation, so that shows you how big a part of JavaScript and forms go together. So if you're ever reading a JavaScript book, they devote entire chapters to JavaScript and forms. So enough of me talking, let me just show you guys a quick example. So in order to start, I basically want to tell you this. Whenever you add I'm not talking about JavaScript now, just basic XHTML. Whenever you add a form to your web page, in JavaScript, it creates a form object automatically. You don't have to, go through var x new form equals yada 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 yada. JavaScript automatically creates a form object, and all we need to do is learn how to access the information in that form. So what I'm going to be doing in this tutorial is creating a basic form using XHTML, and then we're just going to be, accessing it, and I don't know, maybe print out a property or something. So let's go ahead and make a basic form in XHTML. Since this isn't JavaScript, make sure it's outside your script tags. This is just basic XHTML, HTML, whatever you want to call it. So form, and let's go ahead and add 3 elements. Username, and this is just an input. And again, if you don't know what I'm doing right here, go and watch my XHTML tutorials, and I'll tell you guys all about it. So anyways, I'm just going to make a simple text box first, and then I'm going to make, to be honest, you don't have to copy my form exactly. Just go ahead and make any form you want with some elements in it. I just want something to work with on the screen. So make another password box, and then go ahead and make a submit button. So input type equals submit, value equals submit. So now if we go ahead and print this out, we should have a basic form with your username, a password, and a submit button. So we have a website with a basic plain old form on it. Easy enough. So in this tutorial, like I said, I just want to show you guys how to access this form in, JavaScript language. So before I start typing, let me tell you guys this. JavaScript has a very unique way of identifying forms on your web page. It identifies them, first of all, it puts them all into a form array. So if you had a website with 8 different forms in it, it would have 8 different elements in that form array. And again, like I said, you don't need to create this explicitly. Whenever you have forms on your web page, JavaScript sees that and it creates your array for you automatically. So if you're saying, alright, we know that it automatically created an array object already and it created that form array, but how do I access this form right here? Well, just like anything else in arrays, JavaScript numbers each object in your array. So the first form, say you had like 3 different forms on your web page. The first form would be form 0, array index 0. The second form would be form 1. The third form would be form 2. So as you can see, the more forms you have on your web page, the more elements in the array, and that's how you access them. So again, since we only have one form, and I'll basically only be working with one form in these examples, we're going to access that using forms 0, since remember 0 in arrays are the first element in the array. So let's go ahead and one of the properties in forms, this forms object, is length. And the length of a form is basically how many items do you have in it. Well, we have one input right here, one input box, another input box right here, and a button right here. So this form has 3 elements in it. So if we were to print out the length of this form, it would be 3. So let's go ahead and show you guys how to do that. Just go ahead and we'll set it equal to the variable x. Why not? And in order to access the form, you write document dot forms and whatever form you want to access. And like I said, since this is the one and only form, this is going to be form 0. If you wanted to access the 5th form, say you had 5 forms, it would be form 4 because 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4th item in your array, or excuse me, 4th index would be form 5. So easy enough. This is form 0 since it's the first one. So again, your document, which is basically your web page, has an array object that's built in already called forms. Now that forms array object has a built-in property called length. And that length property, like I said, is how many elements are in your form. 1, 2, 3. So now we have the variable 3 stored in x. So now let's just go ahead and print that out to verify it. Document.write x. So now whenever we refresh and load our web page, we should get that form still, but under it we should have a nice pretty little 3 right here. And let me go ahead and take one of these elements out, take this password out, and just refresh it just to show you guys that indeed it changes to 2 because now there are only 2 elements, the input box and the submit button. So that is the basics of how you access different forms in JavaScript. Again, the form is part of the document. The document is basically your web page body itself. Now that body has an object called forms and it's a built-in forms array. So that's how we access that using document.forms. Now this forms has a property that's the length. So that's why we had to access that using .length. So again, what you want to take away from this tutorial is this. Whenever you have a lot of different forms on your web page, you need to identify them using your built-in array object, and that's called forms. And in order to differentiate between different forms, you need to say what form you're looking at. And each form has a built-in property called length, and that is of course how many elements are in your form. And then what we did is we just counted the elements and printed it out on the screen. So now that you know how to identify your forms, and again, with these tutorials, we're going to be working with form 0 basically all the time. We're never going to have more than one form, and you typically don't, but anyways, I just want to go over that. So anyways, that's all I'm going to talk to you guys about for this tutorial. It's getting kind of lengthy, but thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next video. What's up guys, it's Bucky here, and welcome to your 39th JavaScript tutorial. And in the last tutorial, I taught you guys how to access and differentiate between different forms on your web page. But now in this tutorial, since we already have access to each form, I'm going to show you how to access each element in those forms. So let's go ahead and create a form, but I didn't want to keep the old one from last time because I want to make it a little bit different. So as we know from our XHTML tutorials, hopefully you watch those, each form can have a property called name. And I'm just going to set this form equal to Bucky's form. Simple enough. So now if we go ahead and end it, we can begin adding our elements. So let's, just like before, add a username, a password, and a submit button. So the username, all we need to do is, just like last time, we'll just make an input box. So input type equals text, and let's go ahead and add a name to this too. So name equals user's name. Simple enough. So now if you just go ahead and, we won't copy it. So for the password box, it would be input type equals, might as well make it password. I think I made it text in the last tutorial, but that's definitely not secure. So the name equals password. Simple enough. So let me just go ahead and test this right now. Hello, didn't want to, look, I got Yahoo. Son of a beach. Launching Chrome. There we go. So now we got a password box and a text box working perfectly. So I might as well add a submit button. I mean, why not? Input type equals submit, value equals submit. Now let's go ahead and save it and refresh again and check it out. We got a perfectly working form. A username, secret password, and a submit button that does nothing at all. Pretty cool, huh? So like I said, in order to access our form itself, let's say we want to set it equal to a variable. We would first write document, since the forms array is an object of the document. So then we would write forms, and since this is our first form on our web page, we would go ahead and identify it by 0, since everything in arrays start at 0. So after that, I told you guys that there is a way to access each element. So for example, if we wanted to access the first element right here, the forms array has a property already built in, and that's the elements array. So elements 0 would give you access to the first element in your form. Elements 1 would give you access to this, and elements 2 would give you access to this. And you're saying, alright, why do I even want access to it, and what's the use of it? What am I going to do with it? Well, typically people want access to, let's say they wanted to verify that the username only consisted of letters and numbers. So when a user logs in your webpage, you don't want them to enter Bucky $, percentage sign, at sign, semicolon, semicolon. You want like Bucky 65, Bucky 1492. So this is why you would want access to each element. So for now, since we're not validating any data, all we're going to do with this element is get a property of it, and that's the name. And again, your form has a name called Bucky's form, and each element has a name. This one is username, this one is password, this one we didn't give a name. So now the name of username, since this is the first element in form 0, is going to be equal to the value username. X equals username. So now we just go ahead and document, write this, and if we print out X on the screen and save it and launch in Chrome, check it out. It says username right there. So one more quick example, if we go ahead and access the second one by typing form 0, since it's the first form, second element, and go ahead and save this, and then we go ahead and launch this in Chrome, it says password right there. Pretty cool, huh? So you're saying, alright, simple enough. Whenever I want to access a form, I just write form, whatever number it is, and then whenever I want to access an element, I write element, whatever number it is in the array. But all these arrays are getting pretty confusing, Bucky. Is there something easier that I can do? Yes, there is. Instead of worrying about arrays, you have a different option of accessing your forms and also your elements. Instead of using the forms array, you can just go ahead and use the name of the form itself. And this, I think I got a kennel cough. So anyways, let's just go ahead and copy the name of a form, which is Bucky's form, and instead of form 0, we're just going to go ahead and put Bucky's form in it just like that. So just to verify that it's working so far, let's go ahead and run launching Chrome and check it out. We still get password. Pretty cool. So now we know that we can use the form name instead of using that dumb forms array. A whole lot more simple, or a whole lot simpler. What is it? I don't know. I'll let you decide. So now what we can do is we can treat elements the same array. Oh, I cracked myself up. The same way. If an element has a name, we no longer have to use that dumb old elements array. We can just go ahead and use the name of it, which is user's name in this case. So let's go ahead and paste this in. And of course, if we're writing code where we wanted to print out the name of an element, I mean the name's right here, so it's going to print out username. Kind of redundant, but anyways, this is just an example. So let's go ahead and launch this in Chrome, and we see in fact we can access that element using the name instead of the array. So anyways, probably printing out the name wasn't the best example, but hey, I did it anyway. So what I want to stress to you guys in this tutorial is in order to access each individual element in the forms array, we can either use the element array, simple enough, element and then the name of whatever element you want to use, or excuse me, the number of whatever element you want to use, or if it has a name, we can use that as well. So for example, we use Bucky's form right there and username right there, and it worked fine. So with those two things, we now have knowledge of how to access any item in our forms. Any item in any form on our web page. Pretty cool, huh? So now that we have access to them, we can begin doing things like validating the data, make sure they're filling, checking whether or not a checkbox is checked, checking whether a radio box is checked, you know, simple stuff like that. So that's what I'm probably going to be covering in the next tutorial, but for now, that's all I have for you guys. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and now I'll see you guys later. What is going on, guys? It's Bucky and welcome to your 40th tutorial. And in this tutorial I'm going to show you guys probably the most simple example I've ever showed you, and that is basic form validation. Now what this program is going to do is we're going to have a really simple form. It's probably going to be one checkbox, and whenever we click the submit button, it's going to check whether or not that checkbox is checked. So you're saying, alright, this is how you do validation with checkboxes, but I want to do validation with username and passwords. Well, once you understand the basics behind form validation, you can apply this to every single element, so you don't have to learn it a bunch of different ways. You have to understand this one tutorial, and then you understand the basics of form validation. So, like I said, let's go ahead and start out with a basic form, and I'm going to name mine Bucky's form. And let's go ahead and end it right now. And like I said, we can have a bunch of different elements in here, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to add one checkbox. So input type equals checkbox, and might as well give it a name. It'll make it easier. Just name it the box. This is the box. Dun, 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 dun. And now we need some kind of submit button, because whenever we're calling our function later on, and we needed some way to submit the form. That's basically all I'm saying. So input type equals button, and might as well give it a value of something like press me. That's the text that's going to appear on the button. And now let's go ahead and use our on click attribute, and remember, whatever code we type in here, like validator, this is the JavaScript function that's going to be called whenever we click our button. So let's go ahead and save this and run and launch in Chrome what we got now. So whenever we click our button, nothing happens because we didn't type any JavaScript yet. But whenever we create our validator function, we're going to create our validator function to check whether or not this checkbox is checked. So right now it doesn't do anything, but we're going to change that right now. So I'm going to go ahead, and since this is just a function, I'm going to go ahead and add it in the head of my website. Why not? I like to add all my functions there. So again, this is named validator, so that's what we need to call our function. Function, and actually I might as well just copy that to ensure that we don't have any typos. And it's going to take no parameters, and check it out. Whenever we call our function, we need to check whether or not our checkbox is checked or not. And we can do that with a basic if-else statement. So if, And the condition we want to test is this checkbox checked? So first we need access to that checkbox. In order to do that, document dot the name of your form, which is Bucky's form, and let me just double click that, make sure, whoa, not Bucky's forum, Bucky's form, there we go. That's why I double click it, make sure they both light up. So Bucky's form, and now we need to access the element, the checkbox, and we gave it a name, the box, so we can easily access it, and the property to see if it's checked or not is checked. Now this is going to be true if it's checked and false if it's not checked. So let me go ahead and launch in Chrome. See, right now it would be true since it's checked, and right now it would be false since it's not checked. So if it is checked, what bit of code do we want to run? Well, let's just go ahead and make an alert box pop up on the screen that says, you know, something stupid like, yep, it's checked with exclamation point. And now if it's not checked, it's going to be false. So under our else, let's just go ahead and alert something even dumber like, you better check that, Hoss. Nah, I don't like that because they both start with Y, and let's just write, no, it's not checked. Exclamation point. So let's save this and let me run this and then I'll talk you guys through it one more time. Launch in Chrome. So let's go ahead and check it and press it, and it says, yes, it's checked. Cool enough. Now let's go ahead and uncheck it, press it again, and it says, no, it's not checked. Okay, pretty cool. It's working perfectly. So basically here is what we did. We went ahead and we created a form called Bucky's form, and we added a checkbox to it. And whenever we click the button, we told JavaScript to call this validator function. Well, then we went ahead and we made the validator function, and all this function did is it said, alright, whenever you click this button, I'm going to check if the checkbox is checked. If it is, I'm going to run this bit of code. If it's not, I'm going to run this bit of code. So that's why whenever you ran it and it was checked, it says, yes, it's checked. And whenever it was unchecked, it said, no, it's not checked. Pretty cool, huh? So that is the basics of form validation. Again, we only have one other element besides the button on this form, but what people typically do is they make a function to validate all their data. And again, like you see, we validated one piece of data right here, but then you might have another piece of code that says validate another checkbox or validate a text box or a password field. So with that being said, this is how we use a bunch of different, or excuse me, this is the basics of form validation and how to create a function to validate all the data in your form. So that's all I have for you guys in this tutorial. Again, pretty clear and simple, the basics of form validation. You pretty much make your form, use a function to validate the data by accessing each element in the form. Simple enough. So now that I covered that, I don't know what I'm going to be covering in the next tutorial, but trust me, it's going to be amazing. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to, I don't know, don't forget to brush your teeth. I'll see you in the next tutorial.